what do you think? Do you think the same problems that we're noticing in like just society and like at least that I'm noticing that masculinity is kind of like uh, not as potent in men and whatever in just the cultural space. Are you noticing that in the church space as well? I feel like I look around, I don't see like a lot of men leaders doing things, building, leading service, and things like that. I kind of don't know where they go after college or even in college. You know, they're kind of just
Yeah.
so we're like, um,
Well,
are
this
we? Is
is
this anything new? Is it is it mirroring like the society, or is this just always kind of how it is? And like 80-20 rule, there's just going to be a few people usually doing everything, but is it? Do you see it as a problem, or do you just see like it's
uh,
just how it is?
absolutely. That's what I was telling you about. We need men to shoulder responsibility
Mm-hmm.
and like pick up their cross, right?
Yeah.
It's not an easy road, right? It's not an easy road to a successful career. It's also not an easy road to serving God. Um, and I would say that it's very easy to walk away from the faith because the faith is just like a very much like a career, meaning that it takes a lot of struggle to see fruit. It takes a lot of struggle and consistency, and not a lot of men have it. At least not as much as I'd like to see.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's not a lot of men that'll actually put in the work to get the career they want. And I mean work like not like a 4-year degree. We talked about like putting in almost 20 years to get what they want, right? Like it's a hard road. But there's also not a lot of men that will put in the hard work of having like a very good relationship with God. And that very good relationship with God will pay fruits and dividends. It'll create this tree, right?
Mm-hmm.
The tree that we want to create is that you know a lot about God, you have a relationship with God, you love God. Other people are able to feed off of that, and you're able to teach others, right? Eventually, you have children, God willing, and then you teach them, and then their children teach their children. Like, hey, you're like creating this like family tree,
Yeah.
so to speak. And there's lots of fruit that trees can make, and those fruits are the good things that you're doing, and those fruits can feed the homeless. Those good fruits can comfort others. Those good fruits can um, be nurturing, be caring. The fruits of being a good spiritual man and a man who has a real relationship with God is these kinds of fruit. But to get to that took a long time. You didn't turn into this big mature tree that produces all these fruits overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's valuable. I don't think we're putting enough value in all of society for men or women to be spiritually connected to their God.
Yeah.
Christ is the center of our life, and the more we're on social media and all this, the less potent God can be, because when you're being bombarded like 3-4 hours a day, how much of our time you're spending on social media, the average person, um, that's time that you're being brainwashed. That's an amount of time that you're absorbing other people's knowledge or wisdom or lack of it, in some cases. Or you're just being like pacified, and this mental masturbation that you talked about. All of that it's hard to have a relationship with God if you're doing those things, because it's almost in contradiction. And if nothing else, it's just that to be close to God, you cannot be like you cannot have like OCD, or I'm sorry, you cannot have this kind of like short attention span type of characteristic, which
Yeah.
now everything is pushing us to have shorter attention spans.
I just got to read this quote because you just made me think of it right now as you're talking. It's by Saint Silouan the Athonite. He says, love for that which is earthly makes the soul empty, and then there she is sad and grows wild and does not want to pray to God. The enemy then, seeing that the soul is not in God, shakes her and freely places in the mind whatever he wants, and he drives the soul from one thought to another, and the whole day the soul remains in such disorder and cannot purely gaze at the Lord. So I think he's kind of saying like kind of what you're getting at. Like you're on social media, you're doing all these things, and
well, they're all connected. Like
yeah,
if you're on social media, you're getting instant gratification.
yeah,
You have less patience for things.
mhm,
So therefore, it's harder for you to sit down and read a Bible. It's
yeah,
harder for you to sit down and sit through the liturgy. It's harder for you to like have goals and aspirations at work and push hard for them, because you're sort of being pacified. You're given just enough to be happy. And there's nothing. The most dangerous thing I could do for you is give you just enough to be happy, but not so much that you're accomplishing anything.
Mhm.
So I'll give you an example. So let's say if a company gives you just enough money to pay your bills, but never enough money to save, right? But they're paying you 6 figures, and let's say after taxes, it's a decent amount of money still. And it's enough money to pay your car bill, pay your cell phone bill, get yourself a small place, eat decent food, go out with your friends. You know, like it's enough to give you a good life. It's almost harder from that point to think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to start my own company, because you're used to receiving this amount of stuff, and then you'd have to take a hit. You'd have to go backwards, right? When you first start a company, it doesn't instantly make you money.
mhm.
A lot of times it actually does the opposite, like in the beginning. So it's a very dangerous place, is to give you just enough to keep you pacified. And so what happens is on this social media is that we're getting just enough to be pacified, meaning just enough love, just enough admiration, just enough fix of so many things. But it's not real, it's not genuine, it's not deep, it's not anything. But because of that, God has a hard time working with someone who doesn't feel like they need help.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're living in this digital world, you might not think that you need help because you're just happy enough.
What about for guys who aren't living in the digital world, but they're just, they're getting after their bag. They're in that phase, nose to the grindstone, working nonstop, school in the morning, working at night, and they don't. It just. So the God part just got lost. Yeah, it just got lost in this. I'm on this mission right now. How did these guys like?
Yeah,
it's almost like, I think like guys like we as young men, like we have the most energy of anyone in the community.
Mm-hmm.
The most zeal, we have so much passion and energy. It's great to use that towards like something that's for you and your family. But it's almost, to me, it's a little small-minded. Like if we were devoting some of that energy, and maybe there's a way to do both, but I feel like sometimes guys wait till like, you're burnt out. Like if you're waiting till you're 40 till you made it, like, and then you're coming back, like, what are you going to do for us? We need these guys like how do we like? Is there just no place? Like they don't know what to do. Like these guys in their 20s, I see them. You know, they're
Mhm.
like, wow, this guy conquered the world. Look how hard he's working. But like, I want to apply that to like the service or to something for the mission, like for God's glory. And maybe you
Yeah.
don't need to do that. Maybe it's just you do everything with integrity and in a God fearing way, and you just build your life and your family, and you know
Look,
that's your
not
maybe that's
everybody's
your mission.
not
you know?
everybody's created equal,
Yeah.
right? So meaning that not everybody's built the same. Some people will love to serve God in the context of the traditional context, which is, oh, you're a Sunday school servant, or you teach some meeting, or you do something, and that's good. But that's the traditional context.
Yeah.
There's some people that are amazing. Oh my gosh, amazing when it comes to, we're going to go on a service trip, or even a service trip meaning we're just going to downtown and we're going to serve the homeless, or we're going to go to Mexico for a day and do something, or there's been times when I was leading services like that, and I would see people that I've never seen before or haven't seen in years. Like, oh my God, where have you been? And I don't even know how they heard about this service. Like, how did you even hear about this? Like, so their ears perked up. Somehow their radar picked up on the fact that we were going to do a service, because that's where their love was. That's where their passion was. I've seen people who pick up on different things. So meaning that if we tell people that the only way to be a successful man of God is to teach Sunday school or something, right?
Yeah.
And to go be a deacon, that's great. That is one way or two ways now that you can serve God. But we don't give them enough opportunities, or it's just not as easily present, other opportunities to serve God. Like I have this feeling that like some people, if you took them to Africa and said, hey, we're going to go serve the poor in Africa, some people wouldn't want to leave. They're like, oh my God, I love it here. And I love it here not because of Africa. I love it here because I love serving. This is real. It feels real.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one thing, is that there's different services should look different.
Yeah.
And we should give people more than one kind of opportunity to serve. The other thing is that we should actually give young men responsibility. Again, it's back to this responsibility. Give them the responsibility to serve. A lot of things I feel like are micromanaged, and we don't give people the elbow room to be creative and serve maybe in their own way, or in their own style. Sometimes that doesn't work out the way it should.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes it's stifled. That kind of young men have all this energy and passion. I wish that they would come use it at church, and some do. And the ones who do, we should encourage them and give them like the room to grow, and be careful not to stifle them so much, because I feel like that's something that happens a lot is nobody wants to, what is the old guard? The old guard doesn't want to stand down and give room for the new guard, right? So you get like these older guys who have the keys to everything, and the older guys who are on all the church council meetings, and the older guys who are like, who whatever, and just it becomes very rigid. And so these 20-something-year-old guys are given no responsibility. And it's like, oh, well, if you stay here, I'm sorry, you're going to play by our rules, and you're not going to touch anything. You're not going to have any responsibility. You're not. And you'd be surprised how many guys there are. It might not be 100% of guys, but it's be a good chunk of guys that want to feel like they're responsible. That's how I felt. I'm like, I'm not going to do anything wrong. I'm responsible, but at least let me feel like I'm a man, like I'm responsible, and I'll surprise you. I'm going to do a lot. I'm going to, bust my hump for you. Like I'm really going to work. So when I was younger, I was lucky that I had opportunities to serve in ways where I was given some flexibility. And so that gave me the encouragement to
Mm-hmm.
want to give all my energy to it. And there's seasons. So there, I gave like, I still serve till now, but there was a time when I felt like I was giving all my time to service. And it was probably from like, I don't know, like 20 to 30. From age 20 to 30, I didn't have any kids. And even if I was married, it didn't hinder my service. And I was working 6 days a week during that time. And I still, because during that age you have lots of energy, I still made sure to go to retreats and to go to
Mm-hmm.
Bible studies and to do all this stuff. And I was giving so much energy to God.
Yeah.
And when I look back, I look at those days with fondness, like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I was working hard. I was praying hard, and I had, I was married, and I was able to
Mm-hmm.
juggle all those things. And I look back thinking, wow, I'm really proud of those times. Now I'm a dad of 3 kids, and I have a company and all this stuff. And so my time is limited, but I still serve more than most people serve, and I want people to serve more.
Yeah.
So I serve on Sundays as a Sunday school teacher. I serve on Tuesdays as like a Bible study teacher. And there's, like I said, there's not just one way to serve. It's not like, oh, you teach Bible study or else you're not a servant. Like there's other ways to serve.
Well, as you're talking about responsibility, I noticed like there's some responsibility that you're given, and there's some responsibility you can create, like you can make. And I remember times where I just like, I'm going to make this new thing. I'm making this responsibility. I'm making the schedules for whatever. I'm just deciding to do that. That's a little harder, I feel like, in our church, the Coptic church, because it is a little like old guard, and also like there's introducing and doing new things is just it's kind of, there's a lot of red tape, and there's a lot of ask Abuna this and ask him, and show us like, and blah blah blah. And I think that actually that stifles the kind of that spirit of like a young man, like like I just want to just do this and that, which there's like a balance. There's like a spiritual balance of like being kind of obedient and like, calm and serve in whatever capacity you're asked to. And like, I want to, like, as a man, like I want to just, we're all going to, XYZ place next weekend. We're going to, do this and build homes.
So how can you balance those feelings as a young man?
I think it takes wisdom of the leaders to allow that to happen, encourage that to happen, allow failure to happen. Like not everything has to be perfect. There could be mistakes. There could be like an incorrect thing that happens and you correct it later. Not everything has to be so micromanaged, because otherwise I think a lot of these young men they're looking and they're like, well, being a deacon is boring, and I don't want to be a Sunday school servant. And okay, I mean, I can help with the carnival once a year, but like, there's a desire to create, I think, and some young men, not everybody's like this, but I'm not sure if that opportunities, if they're allowed the freedom to explore that.
Yeah, I think it's
I don't have a specific example.
It's a delicate situation, but if you if you give people the room to grow, they will grow. If you kind of like garden off and wall off what they're allowed to do, and then you ask why haven't they grown, then you need to think about that. So I think that it's something where the church is always trying to protect like their traditions, and I understand that, and I respect that, but they also have to find a way to balance between protecting traditions and allowing for people to grow and find their voice and find their capacity to serve and how they will serve and stuff, and to give room for strong young men to be strong young men, because if you try to micromanage, they don't feel like they're being strong young men. They feel being controlled young men, and a lot of people just don't want to play that game, and they'll say, okay, well, you can have the basketball, the court, and the game all to yourself. Keep it, right? Like, and then what happens is you get this old guard that never leave because they never wanted to relinquish this, and so it has to come from the top down, that they decide what are traditions that we're worried about losing, and what are traditions that are like small traditions that maybe just came over from Egypt because they're because they came over from Egypt, not because it's a Christian thing. And also, where can we just give responsibility? These kids want responsibility. Especially certain kinds of men. It sounds like you're looking for ways to be responsible, but you want to own it. Like, if I'm going to be responsible for it, let me own it, and don't micromanage me and tell me what to do every step of the way.
George, I'll tell you, like, we had a meeting, like, I don't know, a few weeks back, our like Sunday meeting with the youth, and there's this young man, he's like 17, 18, and we were just talking together amongst our self-servants, and he just came up to us like, I just want to do anything. Just give me any responsibility. Tell me to do anything. I'll whatever.
But let him own it. He
just wants to do anything. Well, we were just talking separately. He heard what we were talking about. He's like, how can I help? I just want to do anything. I'm like, man, look at this kid. He's like full of energy.
And if you don't give him some responsibility, but let him own it. Own it meaning don't micromanage the guy. Like, and maybe even give him some flexibility within the job that you give him. Right? Flexibility meaning that he has some control. Some people thrive under those conditions because they feel like they have some ownership of it, they have some control of it, even to some small degrees. I know that they're not going to change. We don't want them to change any dogma or anything. I'm just saying, like, if you let the guy throw a hamburger festival, let him choose the hamburgers, and let him choose what vendors, and like give him some room to maneuver. He doesn't have to do anything important, but give him something, and then let him own it. And so, but if you don't give him this, and you don't give him that ownership of that, he will go find somewhere else where he's appreciated. And it might not be at church, which is the sad part. So I think church needs to understand, when somebody says that, or if we can do that, give him something.
I know in my own personal life, like with the service, I remember eventually, like, I stopped serving as much because I remember just always thinking, like, man, this is maybe some pride too, but like, man, I have some talents here, but Abuna's not asking me to do this. He's not tapping into any of my, like, he's not giving me any responsibility.
Even though you asked him, or you didn't ask?
That's the other thing is, I at the time thought it's improper to ask, hey, I should be leading this. I should be doing this. That's like lack of humility, So I was just like, if God wants it, but like, come on, Abuna, you should see.
That's a tough call.
So
that's a tough
I went
call.
to multiple different phases, but during that phase, I was like, it's kind of, I also do think it is the responsibility of the leaders. I mean, that's kind of like to harness everyone's talents for the good of everyone, Like, I know Joel, if George, he's a people's person, let's have him, do whatever. But it's a tough thing, but I don't think that's the only reason, like, young men aren't in the church, that they want responsibility. They have all this energy, they're not using it. There's like of course, like practical things, like they're in college, there's like temptation everywhere.
I think the temptation and the how everything else looks fun to them, how everything else looks more appealing, maybe at a certain age. But I don't think, when people tell me, oh, I'm in college, I don't have time, or
I don't have time
or
stuff.
I don't have time stuff. I mean, if anybody doesn't have time, it's me. and yet I try to make time.
Yeah.
When I should be saying no, I should have said no to my 2 services, but I couldn't help myself. I love responsibility,
Yeah.
and love responsibility meaning that when somebody asks me to do something, I always take on responsibility.
Yeah.
And I love God, and when God asks me to do something, I always love to respond with, yes, God, I'm here for you. Like, or I hear you calling me, so I take it as a call from God.
Yeah.
And then also I know that where my talents lie. And so if God is asking me to do something and it happens to align with my talents, now I would be really a bad servant or a bad son if I was like, no, I don't want to do it, even when it's in the realm of my talents. Like, I should do it no matter what, even if it's not in the realm of my talents. But now I feel really guilty or I should feel really guilty if I'm not going to do it, even when God is asking me to do something like that. So if I can teach, and then somebody comes up to me and says, "Oh, we really need Sunday school teachers. We don't have any." I'm like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, like I've got I got my kids, I got my wife, I got my company, I got my investments. I'm like, I don't have time for all this, but I can't say no to God. Okay, God, like I'll do it, And then they're like, oh, well, we know now that you've got all those things and you teach on that day, but can you do another day? I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can't say no to God. I guess this is God asking me.
This is kind of like your business. You just need to train somebody else
to do it for me.
to do it for
to
you.
Delegate.
Yeah, delegate.
Yeah,
I do think that is missing though. Like, I remember going to all these Bible studies and stuff, and I was like, there wasn't really a clear like, who's the next in line here? Like, who is going to be the successor? Like, is that person who's leading it molding the next person? Are they even thinking about that? I don't think about that like when I do it, but I don't have any like big service that.
Well, I used to take care of the college and graduates at our church, and that was always on my mind of who can I groom to do that, and especially from the beginning I was always looking for people who would serve alongside me. I didn't want all the service. I wanted to share it with people. And then towards the end meaning I started having children. I'm like, oh, I don't know how much longer I can do this, because it takes a lot of coordination. So it then became like, oh, who can, and this is from 2-3 years before I knew that I was going to tap out. And so I tried as much as I could reaching out to priests and head servants and stuff and telling them my intention, and that I was giving them years in advance, like, hey, like 2 years from now, I think I won't be able to do this anymore. And I already had
retirement plan in place.
Yeah, like, and whether they listened or not was another story. but I tried to tell them that. I think that they didn't take it like seriously. Like, yeah, right. Like he's not going
George will be around forever.
Yeah. But it's good to have like an exit strategy, and also I think we should think of things in like seasons. Like the presidents. You're president for 4 years and then you're done, or you can elect to do another 4. I think serving in church should be something, not at those exact time frames, but should be something like that.
Yeah.
Like, would you like to teach Sunday school for the next 2 years? And after that, you can elect to keep going, or you can tap out. Because I think sometimes they find a good servant and then they like just use him until or her till there's nothing left, and put them in multiple services. They're like, oh, well, not just one. Since you're a good workhorse, we've got multiple things. And then you see somebody who's like doing 3 or 4 things all at the same time because they don't know how to say no, and they love responsibility, and they thrive under that, but they also get burned out.
Yeah.
And they burn out, and then sometimes they never come back to it.
Yeah.
So I think we've got to figure out a way to keep people from getting burned out.
Yeah.
Like there has to be some way of doing that.
And just thinking creatively, like, okay, not everybody wants to be in the church role doing those kind of services. Like, It's more about, I think, empowering young men. We're just talking about young men, but it applies to young women as well. To serve wherever they are, like at their job, at their
I think
work.
that should be a
It's
given.
like,
I don't even know if that should be called a service, but that should be a given.
Yeah.
Like if you're a Christian, then you should be carrying Christ
Mhm.
with you everywhere you go
Yeah.
and treating people like Christ everywhere you go. Like
Mhm.
I think that's a given. I think when people use that as, oh, that's my service, I don't know. Like
Being a little more explicit than just being a great coworker.
yeah,
Like going above and like.
exactly. If
But you're saying that's
being a great
part of
being a great nice person should just be part of the package, but serving God, it doesn't have to look like Sunday school teacher. There's a lot of
You think it has to be dedicated though?
yeah,
To be.
something. And even if it's not going out and changing the world,
Mhm.
like you trying to better yourself is a good start. So meaning, are you going to some Bible study? Are you listening to a sermon every day? Are you do something? I mean, like let's, even if you're not going to serve, at least try to you in yourself become a better person. Actively though, not just like not just say, hey, I'm gonna be a good person, but like try to do things that will foster like or cultivate like self-betterment. And a lot of times that's like by reading or by listening intently to certain things. Hopefully by serving others and serving others in the capacity in which you were given. Like if you're a very compassionate person, you could probably use your compassion somehow to serve. If you're very good, you're an extrovert, maybe you could like, invite different people out to lunch. You know that this person's lonely.
Mhm.
You'll say like, hey, do you want to go out to lunch? You see that person looks like they could use a friend. You say, hey, like, can I take you out to dinner?
Mhm.
Or just make sure they're included when the group goes out. Like whatever your talent is, there's some way to plug it in to God's kingdom and how to like use it towards God's kingdom.